Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're going to start this Bava Basra daf Beis. We, of course, are going to begin at the beginning of this Masechta on Beis Amud Aleph. Now, this is the third of the Babas, Bava Kama, Bava Matzia, which we just completed yesterday. Now we're up to Bava Basra. Each are 10 prakim long, which is the equivalent of 30 prakim, which is equivalent to Masechtas Kalim and Seder Taharos, which is also 30 prakim. And there's a question, as the Gemara brought down elsewhere, whether or not these three Masechtas are considered to be like one full Masechta, or that they're broken up into three different parts as three separate Masechtas. And there are halachic ramifications as to having a Mishnah one after the other, whether we hold if it's a stam yachach machlokas stam, so whether or not this is considered to be like one Masechta or not is important to note. It's also important to recognize 176 is the amount of blot, which is very noteworthy and unique because that is the largest number when it comes to Torah in general, which in itself has significance. First of all, again, in Torah Shabbal Peh, in Bava Basra, 176 blot. We also find in Tehillim, in Kapitel Kufya Tes, there's 176 psukim. And interestingly enough, also in Parshas Naso, which in this cycle of Daf Yomi we just had just a few weeks ago, there's also 176 psukim. And the symbolism, I think, is found in Tehillim, that there's 22 letters in the Aleph Beis, 22 times 8. Now the significance of 8 over 7 is Teva, it is L'malam in a Teva, so therefore it represents the notion of the highest you can go, L'malam in a Teva, with the learning of the Aleph Beis, the learning Torah is 176. Hashutfim. So we begin learning about partners. You have partners Shirotzu Lasas Machitza, Bechatzer. Then you have these partners that want to build this wall in a courtyard. So Bainas a Kaisel Be'emsa. So if, let's say, both of them have certain rights, 50-50, so therefore if they want to split it up, so it makes sense, it should be smack in the middle. Makar Shnagel Laslos live nice. Gvil, Gozis, Kfisin, Levanin, Boinin, Hakol Kfiyam, Kaminig Medina. So we're going to follow whatever the Minig Medina is, and therefore it doesn't matter what we're referring to, whether it's a Gvil or Gozis, which are different types of stones, whether they're smooth or not, or Kfisin, Levanim, different types of sizes of bricks. So when it comes to that, as the Mishnah in a few moments is going to elaborate, it's necessary that we don't put it more on one side of one person's property over the other, but rather it should be even. Okay, so Zen, what is that referring to? So Gavil. First of all, when we're dealing with the Gavil, Zen Nais and Gimel Tfachim, the Zen Nais and Gimel Tfachim. Each of these three Tfachim are on opposite sides because it's in total is 6 tfachim. Says Rashi, She'oivi koisel gvil vav tfachim. Since it's 6 tfachim, that's the reason why you want to make sure it's 3 on one side and 3 on the other side. So this way it's evenly distributed. Then the Mishnah continues and says, by gozes, zenois and tefachayim mechsa, and tefachayim mechsa. Each one is 2.5 and 2.5. As Rashi can explain, because shel gozes chamisha. Why? Because the brick itself is 5, or the stone is 5, so therefore 2.5 on each side for this gozes, which is a smoother stone. And we're going with a little bit of a pattern over here. So the Mishnah, after gozes nice and tevachayim mechsa, nice and tevachayim mechsa, we have bekvisin, zen nice and tevachayim, zen nice and tevachayim. Rashi says because kvisin are 4 tevachim wide, so you get 2 each. And then bilveinim, these bricks, zenos and tefach hamechsa, zenos and tefach hamechsa. 1.5 each, obviously, because 1.5 plus 1.5, because the leveinim are 3 tefachim. So no matter what we're dealing with, everything has to be divided so that it's equal and even. That's basically what the Mishnah is coming to tell us. Okay. Now that we've established that, the Mishnah therefore says, therefore, let's say the wall falls down. It's like, what's the difference? The wall's already there. So what are we going to do now? So the din is, we we know that the place where the wall was belongs to both of them, and all of the debris, it belongs to both of them as well. And therefore, even in the event that we don't know necessarily who built it, and there's a Yerusha, so this is what's the assumption. L'chein begina. So too when it comes to a garden. Says Rashi, again, they have to build it that way. So that's the way it's supposed to be built. When it comes to, Rashi says, a stale halavan, a different type of a field, so in that situation, if the custom is not to build, then you're not obligated to do so. So what happens if, let's say, the person doesn't wish to do this? So the other party, if he wants, he could put the wall into his property, and he should make this chazis mibachutz. We'll see on the outside what exactly he needs to do. Therefore, if the wall falls, since he put it on his property, so therefore if it fell, so he gets to keep it. So there has to be a marker on both sides to let people know that they were both the parties that did it. So therefore it's understood that since they decided on their own to agree to build it, so therefore it needs to be clear based on some type of a marker on both sides that that's what happened. Therefore, if it falls, it makes sense that they'll be able to split it evenly because they built it evenly, and therefore it must be that it belongs to them both, to both partners the same. Okay, so that's basically what's being said here. All right, says the Gemara. Now, Savrua, my mechitza, when the Mishnah said that partners who want to build a mechitza in a courtyard, they should do so, we're thinking it's a guda, which Rashi says a kaisel, a real solid wall. That's probably what it refers to. Kedisanya, like we learned, mechitza sakarem, when it comes to a vineyard, which is next to a stay lavan, and it's your friends, shenifritza, and all of a sudden the wall fell down. So Amrulo Gador, so he can say the owner of the vineyard that build. Says Rashi, why? Gadorata shel yasru gefonecha es tivuas asada, because there's a prohibition of kilayim, as Rashi says, mishum kilayim. We don't want this forbidden mixture. So therefore, the wall separated the grains, the wheat and the barley kernels from the grapevines. So if it fell down, then we can say rebuild. He put his seeds samach together next to the wall, as we see in the second parak. Haya gader ben tayim. If there's a wall between them, zes samach gader mekan eseilanis. This person can put his trees next to the wall. Zes samach gader eseraisam. He can put his seeds there. Mekan ukashein shem gader. If there's no wall, then it says also that. Shane Perak Shani lo yita adam ilon samach l'steichaver elim kin hirchem udal damas kadei avodas akarim. So therefore, we see that having a wall allows you to build, and having this wall built allows you to plant next to it, and therefore, if the wall falls, it becomes problematic of kilayim. So therefore, we say that you can tell him build. So let's say it fell down again. Amalo Gador. Again, you tell him to rebuild. Are we halfway there yet? Beis amid beis. Okay, I have a very long masechta. We have a long way to go, so let's take a breath. Nisyayesh himena. Let's say they were miyayesh on this v'lo gadra, they didn't build it. So how is that kidesh? What does that mean? So the tevua is kadesh. Im haisif masayim. If you add 1 to 200 ratio, fine. So what does this come to tell you? You're also chayiv be'achriyusa. We'll see what exactly that means. Now, taima the rotzu. The whole reason why this took place is because upon building the wall, they agreed. Says Rashi, but time of the Rotzalivnus Kaisel. Okay, fine. So that's it. Now, we see from here, it's talking about a real wall, and that's what it's referring to. So, Taima the Rotzu, says Rashi, Taima the Rotzu livnus kaisel. They wanted to build a wall, these partners, the Medash Shneihim Hu, the Mechayvi Chachamim, Shiivna, Bein Shneihim. So, the Chachamim say, okay, fine, you both want to build a wall, so you build this wall between both of you. However, Lo Rotzu and Mechayavin Isai. If, let's say, one party doesn't want it built, so you can't force him to have it built. Alma, what do we see? Hezek Ri'alav Shmei Hezek. Our Mishnah clearly says that even though you're a partner and you may want to do something in your chutzner, which is private, so you want a wall there so that your partner doesn't see everything that you do. But it's mashma from our Mishnah, it's only Rotzu that they build it. Lo Rotzu, if one of the parties doesn't, then the wall won't get built, which is mashma, Hezek Ri'alav Shmei Hezek. V'ema Mechitza Plukta. So let's say Mechitza is actually just talking about some type of division. It says Rashi, Chalukas Chatzer. That's all it is. It's not a real wall. It's just some type of divider. V'tehi Mechetzas Mechasas Ha'eda. V'kivada Rotzu Boinas HaKaisel Bal Karchai. And maybe it's coming to tell you that if you want, you actually mamash have to build a real wall by force. Al Hezek Shmei Hezek. V'hachi Hai Shirotzu Lasas B'chitza Shirotzu Lachtzais Miboile. You should say the word lachsais instead of lasos. So el my good, the boinin, that's a kaisel. So what you want to tell me means building a wall. Boin oso miboile. You should use that language. No yitana oso habamina be mesifus ba'alma kamashmon kaisel. You would think that even if it's something which is not so strong, says Rashi, Meir Mastisen, the Ihu Name Mechitzekru, even Besifas, which is not very strong as a Mechitza, nonetheless that's still called a Mechitza. Verotsu de Katani, when it says if you want to do it, that's a Chaluka Koi, there's a division. Because She'ein Ba Chaluka, Kamashmon Kaisel. Verotsu de Katani Mishem Kaisel, the Ilo Ratza Palgule Bimesifos. Maybe it just means that if they don't want to do it, they can separate it in this other way. Okay. Boinus a kaisel be'emsa v'chul. So pshita. Obviously, it's going to be in the middle. What, you're going to put it 2/3 in one direction? What's the chiddush? Let's say one of them came first and tried to appease the other. Says Rashi, Bikishmenu l'cholka b'mechitza, that he wanted this division of the wall. Madatema matzi yarmalei kiesrat soilach ba'avira b'tashmishta lo esratztilach kamashmulan. So maybe you would think, says Rashi, b'mechitza daka, or maybe a small wall, nisratzisi, just a small wall. Ulemuti ba'avira, just for the air. Could go in shel nesarim shidaka v'hezekriya einba. This way there won't be any issue of hezekriya. O timshach oivia kaisel b'chelcha, or to put the thickness of the wall in your portion chutz medavar muet of livnos kosel avanim. But to build this huge thick wall of stones, so limuti nami tashmishti lo sratzti. I didn't want it for that purpose. Maybe I wanted like a small little wall, right? So maybe you could say, listen, you want a big, strong, sturdy wall, put it in your portion. However, I didn't really want this. Even if I was roitza, I maybe didn't want it to that extent. Kamash Moa. That mamish has to be in the middle. Okay. The Hezek Ri'alav Shmei Hezek. So what are we saying? That maybe Hezek Ri is not Hezek because it's only because Rotzu. But Lo Rotzu, then you don't have to build a wall because Hezek Ri'alav Shmei Hezek. What are you talking about? So we have a Siman Gina Kaisel Kaifin V'chaluk L'chalonos D'Rab Nachman Tashma V'chein Bagina. Now it says clearly that when it comes to a garden, you have to build a wall. It's not an option. So why? It must be because Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek. No, Gina Shani. You're right. When it comes to a Gina, even if you hold Hezek Re'iyah is not, even if you hold Hezek Re'iyah is Alav Shmei Hezek, a garden, you don't want people to see your affairs. You're not allowed to stand in your friend's field, in a time which in a time which he's basically cutting down his harvest. And the reason basically is because it's an ayin hara. So as Rashi says, Shoyazikenu b'ayin ra. We don't want you to be looking into my affairs. You don't need to know my private business and how much money I have and all the success I have. So question 6 rather. Be'elu ofanim moidi kuliyalma de Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek. Where do we find that everyone agrees that Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek? So the first answer is when it comes to a gina. When it comes to a garden, everyone holds this. Okay, weiter. So we're still going to try to understand today and a little bit tomorrow as well whether Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek. So the Gemara says, all right, B'ha v'chein katani. Now v'chein is mashma, maybe it has the same dinim as the mission before. The mashma says Rashi tirvayu chad taimahu gin v'chatzer. It's mashma that the gin and the chatzer have the same reasoning. So just like a gin, we say Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek, maybe it's the same thing when it comes to a chatzer. No. When it says v'chein, it's a gvil v'gozes. It's only going back on the part of, just like the wall should be in the middle, so too the bricks should be smack in the middle. Tashma. Kaisel chatzer shenafel. If you have the wall of a chatzer that fell, mechayav also live nice, you have to build it, ad dalad amos, until dalad amos. So again, why does it have to be built? It must be because it has a Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek. Your answer is no, nafel shani. It's different because it was already there, which obviously shows that we wanted the wall, and now if it fell, of course you have to rebuild it. So the Gemara asks, what was the Havamina? You're right, that's obvious, because that's not even a kasha. Obviously, Nafel, that's a case where it's already it's muchach, it's very clear that your din, the din should be, you have to rebuild it, because it was already built the first time. Okay. So, Seif Tzrichale, you're right. We're actually bringing it for the Seifa. Medalad Amos Malwa Ein Machayav Naisai. That just says that from Dalad Almas and above, then you are not chayav to do. Says Rashi, Koimer, Hua din nami mi kara. V'hadi tani nafal. The reason why it mentions that fell, mishum seifa. That what? When it came to the seifa, ashmi'inan, the yois v'dalad amos, if it's more than 4 amos, ein machayavin. Then we don't require it. V'yavam b'sharishan hayagavoa yoiser, even though it was higher before, at that level of Dalad Amos, we're not going to be mechayev you to rebuild it. Okay. Tashma. Kaifan oisa live nois beishar v'delos l'chatzer. Shema minah Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek. So again, we see Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek when it comes to a gateway and a courtyard. So why is it you have to rebuild? It must be for that reason. Right? So Hezek d'Rabim Shani. This is not talking about an individual. This is for the Rabbim. It says Rashi Shekol B'nei Rishus Rabbim Mistaklin Sham. Everyone's basically staring over there, and therefore when it comes to Hezek Rabbim, so there everyone holds that's a higher level of Hezek Re'iyah, and that certainly is Shmei Hezek. Udiyachid lo Tashma in Cholkin is a Chatzer. We don't divide up a courtyard. Let's say we're referring to specifically with Yerusha. In other words, it's got to be like an 8x4. So when you split it in the middle, it's 4x4 for him and 4x4 for this other person. So that's what it means. So So what do we see? That you're divided up, and you can divide it up even with a wall. It's divided up with a wall. So why is it divided with a wall? Because Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek. Right? It says lo b'misifus ba'alma. As we said, with something which is more flimsy. So therefore, that's really, it doesn't address the Hezek Re'iyah issue, and therefore it doesn't have to necessarily be a wall. Toshma. Hachalonois, when it comes to windows, says Rashi, when it comes to windows, Echad mibnei hashutvin haboine koisel b'chatzer keneged chalonoisa. Let's say one person builds a wall opposite his friend's windows. So because of that, now I was enjoying looking out my window, but now I can't look out my window because you have this wall. So on this, the Gemara says, Bein mil'amal, bein mil'mat, and bein mekenegdon, dalad amos. So whether it's above, below, or keneged, dalad amos. Says Rashi, what is that? Sarach l'harchik es a koisel min achalonos dalad amos. It's got to be at least, your wall has to at least be 4 amos away from this pre-existing window, because otherwise it's going to make it dark. I have a window, so I'll be able to have light come into my room, and all of a sudden you're building a wall like right next to my window. So now all of a sudden, what's the purpose of my window? So the Gemara actually elaborates on this. So Taniula, Milamala, the reason why you can't build above is Kadeshul Yatzis V'yira. I'm concerned that you may end up, let's say, standing on the top and looking downward. Milamatan Kadeshul Yamad V'yira. Again, below is the same thing, that you're going to be looking into my property. Mekanegden kadeshul yapil. Even if it's side by side, you can't build a wall too close to a window because it's going to make everything dark, and I won't have sunlight. So anyway, what do we see? Clearly, it must be because hezek re'iyah shmei hezek. Whereas hazika dabaya shiny. It's different when it comes to a house. You're right. When it comes to a house, there is hezek re'iyah shmei hezek. The question is the same din? Does the same din apply when it comes to a chatzar? Okay, Tashma. If you have a roof which is near your friend's courtyard, so you should put a fence around your roof 4 amos. Says Rashi, we want you to have this wall not just so you don't fall off the roof, but also so that you're not going to be above and peer into someone else's property. And this is not into his house, it's looking into their chutzner. So it must be the hezek re'iyah shmei hezek even by a chutzner. Right? So shani hasam is different over there. Because the owner of the courtyard can rightfully say to the owner of the roof, I'm always using my courtyard. However, it's not very clear when you use a roof to go to the top of a roof. It's used not so frequently. Therefore, I don't know what time salika osis the itztana minoch, as it says on the top of Gimel Madal, which we're going to stop. I don't know when to be more modest, because I have no idea when you're there, when you're not there. And because of that, there's a sense of angst and anxiety, thinking that there's any moment you could be looking into my property. So in that case, it's different, because since the Baal Hagag is higher than the Baal Chatzar, so therefore that is an element of Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek. So therefore, to answer question 6, even if you hold Hezek Re'iyah Lo Shmei Hezek, everyone will agree when it comes to a garden, because of Ayin Hara, Hezek Darabim, the house, and a gag, which is Samach L'Chatzar. Question 5. According to this first opinion of our Gemara, that a machitz is mamish a guda, a solid wall, a maikatani boinin as a kaisel. Why does it say the language of building the kaisel? L'chayra havil neimer boinin oso. It makes more sense. It should say build it. Why didn't it say build a kaisel? Right. So that's what the Gemara said. Elamai guda. So boinin as a kaisel, boinin oso miboile. So Gemara answered, Itan oso havamina b'mitzvos be'alma kamashmon kaisel. So this is actually question 5a, the first question that was posed, and the way that he frames the answer is like this: Itana oiso havamina b'mifas ba'alma kamashmon kaisel. Just quote the language of the Gemara. Question 5b. L'may katani boinen as a hakaisel be'emsa. Why does it say build it in the middle? L'char pshita, right? That's another pretty obvious one. Where else are you going to build it, right? Obviously. So where I said, L'tzricha de kadem chad v'ratzil chaveroi. So let's see how he writes this. De kadem chad v'ratzil chaveroi, manatem amatzi emelei kias ratzi. When did I agree to this? Ba'avira. It's just so there should be some air. V'lo b'tashmishta. Kamash mu'an. So basically you can think that maybe his intentions is just for like a small wall, but not for some very thick wall. So in that case, you would maybe think that much he did not agree to. Sricha, that's the reason why it is mentioned. Okay, let's see maybe a couple more questions. TA2. Umandir hezek real ushme hezek manua begaga samach chatzer sarch bal hagag lasos makadald amos. So that's basically we saw. This was question 6. Kivan de bal chatzer kavia tashmishte v'ilu bal hagag lo kavia tashmishte. You don't know when the guy is going to be on top of his roof. So ein bal chatzer yoda matai litznei. He doesn't know when to basically remain modest or hidden. All right, let's see if this is a question at all. TB17. Tanan kaisel chatzer shenafol machayven oisel livnois hachalonos ben mobal miamat and dal damas. If you hold Hezek is not Lav Shmei Hezek, how do you explain this? Okay. What did I write? Kishneim writes somebody very cool. V'gam nafel shanim neishesh kaisel koidem l'chein oz l'divrei kol as a kaisel nafel sarach livnoisel. Not sure if that's what we're looking for over here. I think all you would have to answer is Hezek d'bayis shani. But it says kaisel chatzer. Let's just see this. Chalonos ben mamata dalad amos. I think that's part of the answer. Is that hezek d'bayis shani adkan.